Ambassador Kethvar walked slowly into the great hall where leaders from across the galaxy had gathered. His green-scaled skin looked pale under the bright lights, and his yellow eyes darted nervously around the room. He had requested this emergency meeting, but now that he stood before hundreds of alien representatives, his confidence was fading. The hall was massive, with seats arranged in circles that rose up toward the ceiling like a giant bowl. Creatures of all shapes and sizes filled those seats. Some had fur, others had feathers or scales like him. Some floated in special tanks filled with liquid, while others sat on platforms that hovered in the air. All of them were powerful leaders of their own worlds and star systems. Kethvar gripped the speaking platform with his clawed hands and cleared his throat. The noise in the hall slowly died down as everyone turned to look at him. He could feel their impatience. They were busy people with important things to do, and he was just another defeated military commander making excuses. 3 years ago, he began, his voice shaking slightly, my people discovered a new species. We called them humans. They lived on a small blue planet in what we thought was an unimportant part of space. Several representatives shifted in their seats. First contact stories were common, and most ended the same way. A more advanced species would make contact, the primitive world would either join the galactic community or be conquered, and life would go on. Our scientists studied them from a distance, Kethvar continued. They seemed young and weak. They had barely learned to travel between the stars in their own system. Their technology was simple. Their numbers were small compared to us. Admiral Vorth of the Hegemony leaned forward in his seat. He was a large creature with thick gray skin and small black eyes. His species had conquered dozens of worlds, and he had little patience for long stories. Get to the point, Zelthian. We know how these stories end. Kethvar's eyes flashed with anger, but he controlled himself. That is exactly the problem. You think you know how it ends, but you are wrong. We thought we knew too. He activated a hologram projector, and images filled the air above the speaking platform. It showed star maps and battle formations, ships moving through space like pieces on a game board. We sent a diplomatic fleet to make first contact. 50 of our best ships, commanded by Admiral Jektar, my own son. His voice grew softer. The plan was simple. We would offer the humans a chance to join our confederacy. If they refused, we would demonstrate our superior power and give them time to reconsider. If they still refused, we would take control of their system for their own good. The images changed to show sleek Zelthian warships approaching a small blue planet orbited by a yellow star. The ships were elegant and deadly, their silver hulls gleaming in the starlight. We found their ships waiting for us near their fourth planet, the one they call Mars. There were only 10 human vessels, and they were smaller than ours. Our admiral followed proper protocol. He opened communication channels and made the standard offer. Kethvar paused and looked around the room. Every eye was focused on him now. Even Admiral Vorth was listening carefully. The human commander appeared on our screen. He was an older male with gray hair and tired eyes. He wore a simple uniform with no decorations or symbols of rank that we could understand. Admiral Jektar offered them membership in our confederacy. He explained the benefits they would receive: protection, technology, trade opportunities. The hologram showed two faces side by side, the scaled features of a Zelthian admiral and the plain face of a human. The human listened to everything my son said. Then he asked one question, and if we refuse? My son explained that we would be forced to demonstrate our superiority, but that they would be given multiple chances to reconsider before any serious action was taken. Standard procedure. Kethvar's voice grew quieter, and the hall was completely silent now. The human commander nodded slowly. Then he said something that still haunts me, I see. So you have already decided to attack us, and you are just being polite about it. Thank you for the warning. Then he closed the communication channel. Several representatives made sounds of confusion. This was not how first contact usually went. Most species would argue or try to negotiate or ask for time to consider the offer. My son was puzzled, but he followed protocol. He waited 6 of their hours and then sent another message, offering final terms. No response. He waited another 6 hours and sent a final ultimatum. Still no response. The images in the hologram changed to show the human ships moving into attack formation. Then the humans attacked. Admiral Vorth snorted. 10 ships against 50? Brave but foolish. Kethvar turned his yellow eyes toward the admiral. That is exactly what we thought. But we were wrong about everything. The human ships moved like nothing we had ever seen. They did not fight like other species fight. There were no more communications, no demands for surrender, no offers of mercy. The hologram showed the battle in terrible detail. Human ships flowing through the Zelthian formation like water, their weapons cutting through shields and armor with frightening efficiency. They destroyed 37 of our ships in less than 2 hours. The remaining 13 were left crippled but intact. Then, just as suddenly as they had attacked, the humans stopped fighting. Kethvar looked around the room at the confused faces staring back at him. They let the survivors go. They even provided coordinates for the safest route home. But they never said a single word during the entire battle. Not one communication. No demands, no threats, no final words of victory. He deactivated the hologram and gripped the platform tighter. Do you understand what I am trying to tell you? They did not show mercy. They sent a message. Admiral Vorth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominator, watching the green and blue planet grow larger on his main screen. The world was called Kepler 442b by the humans, but he would give it a proper name after they conquered it. Intelligence reports said only 50,000 humans lived there, scattered across 3 small cities. Perfect, he thought to himself. A small target to test what these humans can really do. His fleet of 25 warships hung in space around the planet like a metal net. Each ship was twice the size of the largest human vessels they had detected. Vorth felt confident this would be an easy victory that would prove the Zelthian ambassador was just making excuses for his own failure. Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the planet's surface, reported his communications officer, a young Vask named Helt. Put it on the main screen, Vorth ordered. The face that appeared was unremarkable by any measure. It belonged to a middle-aged human male with brown hair starting to turn gray at the edges. His skin was weathered like someone who had spent time working outdoors. Most importantly, his brown eyes looked tired but not afraid. This is Governor James Mitchell of New Plymouth Colony, the human said in a calm voice. Your ships are in violation of our territorial space. Please state your business here. Vorth smiled, showing his sharp teeth. This was going exactly as expected. The human was being polite and reasonable, just like most primitive species when faced with superior force. I am Admiral Vorth of the Hegemony of Vask, he announced in his most commanding tone. This world now belongs to us. You have 12 hours to evacuate all human civilians to your transport ships. Any who remain after that time will be considered hostile and dealt with accordingly. Governor Mitchell listened without interrupting. His expression never changed. When Vorth finished speaking, the human was quiet for several seconds, as if thinking carefully about his response. I see, Mitchell finally said. So you have decided to attack us. Thank you for making that clear. Vorth frowned. This was not the usual response. Most species would argue or beg for more time or try to negotiate better terms. You have 12 hours, he repeated. Use them wisely. We will, Mitchell said simply, and the transmission ended. Helt looked confused. Sir, should we send another message? They did not ask for terms or try to negotiate. They will, Vorth said confidently. Fear takes time to set in. In a few hours they will be begging us for mercy. But no other messages came from the planet. The humans remained completely silent as the hours passed. Vorth's sensors detected some movement on the surface, ships taking off and landing, people moving between the cities, but nothing that looked like a military response. Perhaps they are evacuating as ordered, suggested Helt. Perhaps, Vorth agreed, though something felt wrong. He had conquered 12 worlds, and the pattern was always the same. First came denial, then anger, then desperate attempts at negotiation, and finally acceptance. These humans seemed to have skipped all the normal steps. When the 12-hour deadline passed with no word from the planet, Vorth decided it was time to demonstrate his power. Target the smaller city on the northern continent, he ordered. Fire one missile as a warning shot. The missile launched from his ship and streaked toward the planet. Vorth watched it on his screen, expecting to see it impact near the city in a show of force that would bring the humans running back to negotiate. Instead, the missile simply disappeared. What happened? Vorth demanded. Unknown, sir, replied his weapons officer. The missile just vanished. No explosion, no debris. It was there one moment and gone the next. Sensor malfunction, Vorth said, though he was beginning to feel uneasy. Fire another missile. This one also disappeared, along with the third and fourth. By then, Vorth's sensors were detecting something new. Small objects were rising from the planet's surface, objects that had not been there before. Sir, Helt called out, his voice tight with worry. We have unknown contacts approaching. 12 ships, moving fast. Vorth looked at his tactical display and felt his confidence drain away. The approaching ships were not large, but they moved with a precision and speed that his senses could barely track. Worse, they had appeared with no warning. His long-range sensors should have detected them launching from the planet minutes earlier. "Open a communication channel," he ordered. "Demand that they identify themselves." "No response, sir. They are not answering our signals." The human ships flowed into his formation like water finding the cracks in a dam. Vorth watched in growing horror as they moved between his vessels with impossible grace. His own ships were forced to stop firing their main weapons for fear of hitting each other. "All ships, spread formation," he commanded. "Give our gunners room to work." But the humans seemed to anticipate every order he gave. When his ships moved apart, the human vessels moved with them. When he ordered his fleet to focus fire on a single target, the humans scattered and reformed before his weapons could lock on. Then they began to shoot back. Vorth had expected human weapons to be primitive, simple missiles and energy beams like most young species used. Instead, his ships began taking damage from weapons he could not even identify. His shields flickered and failed. His armor plating cracked and peeled away. "Damage report," he shouted. "Engine room reports power fluctuations. Weapons systems are operating at 60%. Hull breach on Deck 7, came the rapid responses from his crew. Around him, other ships in his fleet were reporting similar problems. But what terrified Vorth most was the silence. The humans had not sent a single message during the entire battle. No demands for surrender, no threats, no battle cries or victory songs. They fought like machines, cold and efficient and utterly without mercy. In 20 minutes, half his fleet was crippled and drifting. The surviving ships found their weapons systems mysteriously disabled while their engines remained functional, a clear message that they were being allowed to leave. Admiral Vorth stared at his tactical display in shock, finally understanding what the Zelthian ambassador had tried to warn them about. Emperor Kraloth sat in his crystal throne, studying the reports from the vast defeat with growing anger. His military advisors stood in a half-circle around him, their heads bowed as he read through the battle details for the third time. 25 ships, he said slowly, his deep voice echoing through the throne room. Admiral Vorth had 25 ships against 12 human vessels, and he lost half his fleet. General Mordak, his chief military advisor, shifted nervously. "Your Majesty, the Vask may have underestimated human capabilities. But we are not the Vask. Our ships are larger and our weapons more advanced." Kraloth looked up from the reports. His species, the Carathians, were known throughout the galaxy as master warriors. Their empire controlled 43 star systems and had never lost a major battle. "You think the humans simply have better technology?" he asked. "It is the only logical explanation," Mordak replied. "No species can fight against superior numbers unless they have some technological advantage we do not understand." The Emperor stood up and walked to the great window that looked out over his capital city. Below him, millions of Carathians went about their daily lives, confident that their empire would protect them from any threat. "Then we will test this theory properly," he decided. "Prepare 3 battle fleets. We will strike 3 human worlds at the same time. They cannot defend everywhere at once." On Earth, General Marcus Thompson sat in the deep underground command center that controlled humanity's defense forces. He was an old soldier with gray hair and scars on his hands from his younger days as a fighter pilot. Around him, dozens of officers worked at computer stations, monitoring human colonies across the galaxy. Colonel Helen Davis, his second-in-command, approached with a datapad in her hand. "Sir, we have movement in the Carathian Empire. 3 large fleets are forming up near their border systems." Thompson took the pad and studied the information. Each Carathian fleet contained over 100 ships, much larger than anything they had faced before. "Targets?" he asked. "Intelligence suggests New Terra, Kepler 442b, and Wolf 359, Davis replied. "If they hit all 3 at once, our regular defense fleets will be badly outnumbered." Thompson nodded slowly. They had expected this. The early victories against the Zelthians and Vask had been designed to look impressive but not too impressive. They needed their enemies to escalate, to commit their main forces, before revealing humanity's true capabilities. "Signal all commands," he said calmly. "Authorization code Lazarus 7. Wake them up." Across the galaxy, things that had drifted silently through space for decades began to stir. What alien sensors had dismissed as ancient wrecks or pieces of space debris suddenly came to life. Power cores that had been dormant for 20 years blazed back to full operation. Weapon systems that had been waiting patiently began their activation sequences. The Carathian Empire had made the same mistake that most species made when they looked at humanity. They saw only what humans wanted them to see, the obvious colonies, the visible fleets, the ships that traveled regular trade routes. They had never noticed the other things. The deep space platforms that looked like asteroids. The cargo vessels that were actually mobile weapon systems. The mining ships that carried enough firepower to destroy a planet. For 50 years, ever since humans had first developed faster-than-light travel, they had been preparing for this moment. Every human colony was part of the defense network. Every trade route was a strategic position. Every civilian ship had the ability to become a warship when needed. Emperor Kraloth watched the attack begin from his command ship, the largest vessel in his personal fleet. His forces struck all 3 targets exactly as planned, jumping out of hyperspace in perfect formation. At New Terra, his ships found the human defense fleet waiting for them, 30 vessels against his 120. The numbers looked good. At Kepler 442b, Governor Mitchell's small garrison faced similar odds. Again, the Carathians had overwhelming superiority. At Wolf 359, the mining colony appeared to have only a few transport ships and civilian vessels for protection. Begin the attacks, Kraloth ordered. That was when everything went wrong. At New Terra, Admiral Rachel Carter's defense fleet had been hiding behind the planet itself, using the world's mass to block enemy sensors. As the Carathian ships moved into attack position, 60 additional human vessels emerged from the planet's shadow. At Wolf 359, Captain David Stone's mining ships dropped their disguises. What had looked like civilian cargo vessels revealed themselves to be heavily armed warships, their holds filled with weapons instead of ore. But it was at Kepler 442b where the Carathians received their biggest shock. Governor Mitchell, the same tired-looking man who had spoken so calmly to Admiral Vorth, stood on the bridge of what they now realized was not a planetary defense platform at all. Governor, his tactical officer reported, all weapon systems are online. The station is fully operational. Mitchell looked out at the approaching Carathian fleet through his bridge windows. What they had thought was a simple command center built into an asteroid was actually a massive battle station that had been constructed over 15 years. It had been designed to look like nothing more than a mining platform, but it carried enough weapons to destroy an entire fleet. Begin systematic targeting, Mitchell ordered in the same calm voice he had used with the Vask Admiral. Disable their communications first, then their engines. We want survivors to report what they have learned here. Emperor Kraloth watched in horror as his 3 fleets were systematically destroyed. The humans had not just prepared for this battle, they had been planning it for decades. Every move his forces made seemed anticipated. Every tactic he tried had already been countered before he could implement it. Worst of all, the humans maintained their terrible silence throughout the battle. No demands, no threats, no communication of any kind. They simply executed their plan with cold, mechanical precision. As his flagship limped away from the battlefield, Kraloth finally understood what the other defeated commanders had tried to tell him. This was not a war in any sense he understood. This was an extermination. The emergency session of the Galactic Council met in complete chaos. Representatives from dozens of species shouted at each other across the Great Hall, their voices creating a noise that hurt the ears. Some were demanding immediate action against the humans. Others wanted to negotiate peace. Many were simply afraid. Ambassador Kethvar stood at the speaking platform again, but this time no one was ignoring him. The reports coming in from across the galaxy were all the same. Every species that had attacked the humans was being systematically destroyed. 7 different species have now engaged these humans in combat, Kethvar announced, his voice cutting through the noise. The result is always the same. Complete defeat. Chancellor Veltar of the Andromedans raised one of her 4 arms. But they must want something. Every species wants something. Territory, resources, slaves, tribute. What do the humans demand? Nothing, Kethvar replied. That is what you still do not understand. They do not make demands because they are not trying to conquer us. They are trying to eliminate us as a threat. On the far side of the galaxy, General Patricia Williams stood on the bridge of her command ship, watching her fleet methodically dismantle the Carathian home system's defenses. Her ships moved through space with the precision of a surgical team, targeting specific installations while carefully avoiding civilian areas. The Carathians had built their defenses over 300 years. Massive orbital platforms surrounded their homeworld. Weapons satellites created layers of protection that should have been impossible to penetrate. Their fleet bases were hidden in asteroid fields and protected by the most advanced shields in the galaxy. All of it was being destroyed with mechanical efficiency. Admiral, her communications officer, Lieutenant Tom Bradley, called out. The Carathians are requesting a ceasefire. They want to discuss surrender terms. Williams did not even look up from her tactical display. Did they request a ceasefire before they attacked New Terra? No. Then why would we acknowledge their request now? She pointed to a weapons platform on her screen. Target that installation next. Make sure the reactor is completely disabled. The pattern was the same across every battlefield. Human forces struck with overwhelming precision, but they were not trying to conquer worlds or capture resources. Instead, they systematically destroyed everything that could be used to build or support a military. Captain Susan Miller commanded a stealth fleet that had penetrated deep into vast territory. Her ships moved like ghosts through space, invisible to enemy sensors until it was too late. But her targets were not cities or civilian populations. She destroyed shipyards, weapons factories, military academies, and research centers. Captain, her tactical officer reported, we have located their main fleet training facility. 60,000 cadets and instructors are currently on base. Miller studied the intelligence report. The facility was heavily defended and strategically important, but it was also full of young Vask who had never participated in the attacks on human colonies. Mark it as off-limits, she decided. Target the empty facilities only. Destroy their equipment and infrastructure, but avoid casualties. This was the part that confused their enemies most. Humans showed no mercy to those who attacked them, but they went to great lengths to avoid harming civilians or non-combatants. It was a level of precision that seemed impossible to maintain during wartime. On the Thrakari homeworld, Prime Minister Jack Tar paced back and forth in his office, trying to understand reports from his military commanders. Human ships had appeared throughout their territory, but they were not attacking population centers or government buildings. They destroyed every military shipyard in the system, his defense minister reported. But they left the civilian shipyards untouched, even though they were right next to each other. What about our fleet command center? Completely destroyed. But the hospital complex next door was not even damaged. Somehow they managed to level our entire command structure while leaving the medical center intact. Jack Tar stopped pacing and stared out his window at the city below. How is that possible? His science advisor, Dr. Veltar, looked up from her datapad. Their weapons are more precise than anything we have ever seen. They can target individual rooms in a building while leaving the rest of the structure undamaged. But why? Jack Tar demanded. If they can destroy our military so easily, why not just eliminate us completely? Dr. Veltar was quiet for a long moment. Because they do not see us as enemies to be conquered. They see us as a problem to be solved. And the problem is not that we exist, the problem is that we attack them. Back in the Galactic Council, the debate continued as more reports arrived. The hegemony of Vask had lost 80% of their military capability. The Carathian Empire's fleet was reduced to scattered survivors hiding in neutral space. The Thrakari Collective was requesting emergency aid to evacuate their remaining military personnel. We must contact Earth directly, suggested Senator Morkai of the Centauri Alliance. Surely they will negotiate if we approach them properly. Ambassador Kethvar shook his head sadly. The Thrakari already tried that. They sent a diplomatic message to Earth requesting peace talks. And? Senator Morkai asked hopefully. No response. Human ships continued their advance as if the message had never been sent. The whole fell silent as the full meaning of this became clear. Humans were not interested in negotiation or surrender terms. They were not trying to gain political advantage or expand their territory. They have decided that we are too dangerous to be allowed to maintain military forces, Kethvar explained. From their perspective, the war is already over. They are simply completing the necessary cleanup operations. In space above the Carathian homeworld, General Williams watched the last orbital defense platform explode in a brief flash of light. The planet below was completely defenseless now, but her ships made no move to attack it. All targets destroyed, General, Lieutenant Bradley reported. What are your orders? Williams looked at the blue and green world spinning peacefully below them. Millions of Carathians lived there, going about their daily lives while their military burned in space above them. Set course for the next system, she ordered. Our work here is finished. The neutral station at Proxima Haven floated quietly in space, far from any military conflict. It had been built as a place where different species could meet safely, but now it served a different purpose. The station was full of refugees, former admirals, generals, and leaders who had once commanded mighty fleets and now had nothing left. Ambassador Kethvar walked through the crowded corridors, passing beings from dozens of different worlds. In one corner, he saw Emperor Kraloth sitting alone at a table in what used to be an elegant restaurant. The once proud ruler of 43 worlds now stared blankly at intelligence reports that told the same story over and over: his empire was gone. Admiral Vorth sat nearby, his grey skin looking pale under the artificial lights. The vast commander who had been so confident just weeks ago now jumped at every small noise. His hands shook as he tried to drink from a cup of synthetic coffee. "They could have destroyed our homeworlds on the first day," Vorth whispered to no one in particular. "The firepower we saw, they could have turned our planets to dust within hours." Kethvar stopped and sat down beside the broken admiral. "But then there would be no one left to remember what happened here." "I do not understand," Vorth said, looking up with confusion in his small black eyes. "Why let us live? Why allow survivors to escape? What is the point?" Before Kethvar could answer, a new group of refugees entered the station. They were Thrakari military officers, still wearing their torn uniforms. Their leader, General Zentar, looked around the room with the same shocked expression they had all worn when they first arrived. "Is it true?" Zentar asked. "Did the humans really refuse to answer our peace communications?" "Completely true," confirmed Dr. Veltar, the Thrakari science advisor who had arrived 2 days earlier. "We sent 17 different messages to Earth. Offers of surrender, requests for negotiations, even unconditional submission. Not one response." General Zentar slumped into an empty chair. "Our fleets are gone. Every shipyard, every weapons factory, every military academy, all destroyed. But they left our civilian worlds completely untouched." On Earth, in a small office overlooking the old city of Washington, Secretary of Defense Robert Harrison reviewed the final reports with President Margaret Foster. The woman who led humanity's government was not what most aliens would expect. She was in her 60s, with gray hair and kind eyes that had seen too much war. "Status report," she said quietly. "The operation is essentially complete, Madam President," Harrison replied. "All hostile military forces have been neutralized. Enemy shipbuilding capacity has been reduced to 0 across 7 different species. Their ability to wage war has been eliminated for at least the next 50 years. Foster looked out her window at the city below. People were walking to work, children were playing in parks, and life continued as normal. Most of Earth's population did not even know that a war had been fought. "Casualties?" she asked. "Minimal on our side, as expected. Among enemy forces, we estimate military losses at 92%. Civilian casualties were kept below 1,000 across all theaters of operation." Foster nodded slowly. The precision required to destroy military targets while protecting civilians was incredible, but human technology had been designed specifically for this purpose. Every weapon, every ship, every strategy had been planned with surgical accuracy in mind. "They still do not understand, do they?" she said. "No, Madam President. Intelligence reports show they continue to send peace offers and surrender requests. They expect us to respond with demands or conditions." Back at Proxima Haven, Ambassador Kethvar had gathered the surviving leaders in the station's main conference room. The space was designed to hold diplomatic meetings, but now it served as a place for the defeated to try to make sense of what had happened to them. "We need to understand what we are dealing with," Kethvar told the group. "These humans do not think like us. They do not fight like us. They do not even see war the same way we do." Emperor Kraloth looked up from his reports. "What do you mean? When we fight wars, what is our goal?" Kethvar asked. "We want to gain territory, or resources, or to force an enemy to accept our terms. War is politics continued by other means." Several leaders nodded in agreement. This was basic military strategy that every species understood. "But humans see war differently," Kethvar continued. "For them, war is not politics. War is pest control." The room fell silent as the meaning of this became clear. "They do not want to conquer us or rule us," he explained. "They want to make sure we can never threaten them again. When we chose to attack their people, we became a problem that needed to be solved permanently." Dr. Veltar raised one of her tentacle-like arms. "But they could have simply destroyed our worlds completely. Why this precision? Why spare civilians?" "Because they are not monsters," Kethvar replied. "They do not hate us. They simply recognize that we are dangerous and must be dealt with accordingly. A farmer does not hate the insects that eat his crops, but he still removes them." Admiral Vorth shuddered. "So cold. So calculated. Exactly, Kethvar said. Other species might threaten you with surrender or die. They offer ultimatums and final chances because they want something from you. But humans are different. They do not give you a last chance because they are your last chance. When you choose to attack them, you have already made the only choice they will allow you to make. The old Zelthian walked to the communication console at the front of the room. It was time to send one final message to the galaxy, a warning that might prevent other species from making the same mistake. Citizens of the galaxy, he began, his voice carrying across countless worlds through the communication network, I tried to warn you before about the nature of humanity. You dismissed my words as the excuses of a defeated commander. He paused and looked directly into the camera. Now you know the truth. Humans do not negotiate during war because war means the negotiation has already failed. They gave us peace, and we chose violence. They offered us friendship, and we chose conquest. Now they have given us the only thing we have earned, silence. The transmission ended, and the galaxy finally understood. In the distance, human patrol ships maintained their watch, ensuring that the lesson would never be forgotten.